I'm going to just skip forward. What our fourth key strategy area, as I mentioned earlier, is literacy-based learning. These are the 5-year goals, the big goals that we are tracking. And our motto when we launched this vision last spring is all means all. We believe that if given the appropriate supports, all students can graduate from high school prepared to go on to college or to enter the workforce. And that means English language learners, children with special needs, children who don't have parent advocates at home. We believe we can figure this out. And the tools that we have now to figure it out are the satisfaction surveys, the engagement surveys, the annual tracking of student progress. And one of the things Janet asked me to talk about is what are a couple things you did as superintendent to usher this in and gain buy-in. And I guess if I think about it, I didn't do anything profound. I did something that I think superintendents have to do about any change, and that is communicate. And communication is probably 75% of your job. And communication has to be two-way. You have to speak and you have to listen. And when I became superintendent in 2007, I initiated a whole bunch of listening opportunities that honestly sometimes can feel like a burden because I have a parent advisory group once a month. I have a principal roundtable. I have a teacher roundtable. I have a high school student stakeholder group. And sometimes you want to go home at night and you don't want to go to these listening opportunities, and yet they've been enormously helpful because in addition to the community needs, we took all the proposals out to the stakeholder groups. And it's not just once a year for me, as I said, it's once a month that we're talking about it. And one of the things the principals are probably tired of hearing me do is remind them that they have to communicate the big vision and that they have to go back and remind people all the time about the importance of the work that we do. It's not just about test scores, it is about a moral obligation to give people the key to a future. The future belongs to the educated. And just this morning on TV, I heard about the shooting of the 14-year-old girl in Pakistan who was dragged off the school bus yesterday and shot in the head for advocating education for girls and civil rights for all. And they played a taped interview of her speaking last year. And she said, they asked her, what would you do if you were president? And she said, I would create more educational opportunities because where people are uneducated, you have the Taliban. And where people are educated, the Taliban does not come. And I use things like this, I try to use things like this to remind our principals that wherever we don't have educational opportunity in the world, we have an underclass of people. And in this country, we will continue to have an economic underclass unless we close the achievement gap and let people graduate. So it's a big issue for us as a country, and when we remind principals of that and they go back and remind faculties and we're all singing the same song, we do get buy-in. And I think that's the role that I played, is to try to remind people why this is important and that these are tools that will give us better information about how we're implementing this.
Yeah, I'm going to add a couple of things just from my perspective. We were asked to talk about this, and Janet said she wanted me to address why, from a board perspective, we wanted this evidence-based leadership. And I think Dr. McGinley has done a great job over her tenure. She was already on an objective evaluation system, but as she said previously, it wasn't throughout the system. And I think until you align everybody else together, it's not going to work. The other part of this, though, that's most important, and it had never been done to my knowledge, was asking our customers what they thought. And you saw our initial response was 5,000, jumping to 10. I fully expect the next one to go to 15 or 20. And people reached out to me and said, nobody's ever asked me before. They're just thrilled to be asked. We also fight from a board perspective. Well, we just fight, but the board's perspective has not always been one of being supportive of where we're trying to go. And so consequently, there are occasions where the good news doesn't come out. And there's been a great effort on behalf of the district to start to change that, to make sure the good news is out there. We've got problems. Everybody's got problems. But let's at least recognize and raise up the folks and the people that are doing well. There's been a tendency in Charleston not to do that very much. And so I think we've done a better job of that, but by also getting this feedback from our customers, we're finding out that people think we're doing a pretty good job. Well, then all of a sudden you start to change the conversation around not just the dinner table, but also at the boardroom table. In addition to my volunteer duty, any of you get paid for this anyway? Because we certainly don't. No, and I don't want any money. But I'm also heavily involved in our chamber, and we are focused on economic development in the region. When you have something like Boeing, we have wind turbine facilities, we have lots of other stuff going on, we know we need an educated workforce to do the job. So it's also an enlightened self-interest that says, well, wait a minute, we've got to do this because we've gotten a lot of great accolades in Charleston. We had this great chart that says we've got the biggest brain gain in terms of college educated, but they're not from Charleston. Those were people that came in and took jobs. So we're not there yet. Now it's great to take that graphic and make it wonderful, but the reality is that's not graduates from our schools. So having this kind of a model is going to allow people to see what we're doing well. We're going to hopefully change the maturity level of the conversation and say, okay, where's our problems? What do we need to do to help? The balance of our community has actually gotten more in alignment than I've ever seen. From the United Way to our community partners, to our higher ed folks, a real effort on behalf of philanthropists, industrialists, a lot of folks in a cradle-to-career mentality where they're saying, okay, you've got it from K to 12, we're going to take it from birth to K, we're going to work on having some additional higher ed opportunities so that kids that are in our schools have a better chance of being successful when they get there, and they've got a path when they get out, either straight into the workforce, into higher ed, or for those folks that have already got a degree, masters and doctorates. So it's more of a holistic approach in the community than we've ever had before. Everybody's taking some responsibility because we don't get to pick our customers, right? You get to take everybody that's there, and some people get dropped off and you hope you do well. We all got to get some help. So I think this has brought us all together in a way that's been really, really impactful, and hopefully we'll all move it forward. But anyway, with that, I'll take questions.
The one thing I wanted, with what Dr. McGinley was talking about with her reach out and communication, when we have on the parent satisfaction, employee engagement survey, we have an item on there that talks about the ability of the superintendent to communicate effectively, and Dr. McGinley's just knocks that item out of the park. And I think that's why we've really gone and said, what have you done? So one of the reasons why, even though Charleston's not quite as advanced in the evidence-based leadership model, what it is purposeful with putting them up here to talk, because they've set the stage in so many particular ways that I think a number of you that are kind of thinking about entering the journey or at a particular place can relate to. So you've set good stages. You've set it in place, and so it gives you that leverage, it gives you leverage to really move forward pretty quickly, which they've done, and I think that's important to hear too. Yeah, it's nice when you can hear 4 years down the road what it looks like, but the 4 years down the road feels a little bit better than the 1 or 2 years at the beginning. Is that so? Anyway.